On August 18, 2018, the quiet community of Horry County, South Carolina, was shaken by a gruesome discovery that would lead to a complex investigation and shocking revelations. The brutal murders of Robert Ford Jr., 59, and his son Robbie Stetson Ford, 25, unfolded as a tragic tale of family betrayal, greed, and cold-blooded execution. This article delves into the details of the crime scene, the meticulous investigation that followed, and the compelling evidence that ultimately brought the perpetrators to justice. The events of that fateful day began when the Horry County Police Department responded to a report of an abandoned vehicle near Cook's Circle and Highway 917. Officers discovered a 2005 Ford Escape registered to Robert Ford Jr. that had been partially burned. This initial finding raised immediate suspicions and prompted further investigation. As the police expanded their search, they made a horrifying discovery at the Ford family home. There, in the yard, lay the bodies of Robert Ford Jr. and his son Robbie Stetson Ford. Both men had been shot to death, their lives brutally cut short in what appeared to be a carefully orchestrated attack. The crime scene painted a picture of violence and premeditation. The father and son, gunned down on their own property, were found in close proximity to each other, suggesting they may have been ambushed upon arrival at their home. The positioning of the bodies and the nature of the wounds indicated that the shooter had acted with deadly precision, leaving little chance for the victims to defend themselves. Forensic experts meticulously combed the area for evidence, documenting the position of the bodies, collecting shell casings, and searching for any signs of struggle or defensive wounds. The brutality of the crime was evident, and investigators knew they were dealing with a calculated act of violence rather than a crime of passion or random attack. The investigation into the double murder took a significant turn when crime scene investigators processed the scene of the abandoned car. The vehicle, a 2005 Ford Escape, was found partially burned, suggesting an attempt to destroy evidence. However, the fire had not fully consumed the car, leaving behind crucial pieces of evidence. 3 cigarette butts were found on the ground outside the driver's door, and a partially burned skull cap was discovered on the driver's side floorboard. These items were carefully collected and sent for DNA analysis. The forensic team was able to develop a DNA profile from both the cigarette butts and the skull cap. However, when this profile was run through law enforcement databases, no match was found. The case had hit its first major roadblock, and for 2 years, it would remain unsolved. As detectives began piecing together the events leading up to the murders, they focused on the abandoned and partially burned Ford Escape. This vehicle would prove to be a crucial link in the investigation. Crime scene investigators processed the scene around the car with painstaking attention to detail. Their efforts yielded significant evidence. 3 cigarette butts were found on the ground outside the driver's door, and a partially burned skull cap was discovered on the driver's side floorboard. These items were carefully collected and sent for DNA analysis. The forensic team was able to develop a DNA profile from both the cigarette butts and the skull cap. However, when this profile was run through law enforcement databases, no match was found. The case had hit its first major roadblock, and for 2 years, it would remain unsolved. Despite the lack of a DNA match, investigators continued to pursue leads and interview potential witnesses. They delved into the backgrounds of Robert and Robbie Ford, examining their personal and professional relationships, financial records, and any potential enemies or conflicts that might have led to their murders. As the investigation progressed, a disturbing possibility emerged. that this double homicide might have been orchestrated by someone close to the victims. This theory gained traction as detectives uncovered evidence of family tensions and financial motivations that would later prove crucial to solving the case. Faced with a cold case and determined to bring justice to the Ford family, the Horry County Police Department made a pivotal decision. They partnered with Orchestrator, a company specializing in forensic genetic genealogy, in hopes of identifying the person whose DNA was found at the scene of the burned car. Orchestrat's approach represented a cutting-edge development in forensic science. By combining advanced DNA analysis with traditional genealogical research, their team could potentially identify relatives of the unknown suspect and narrow down the pool of possible perpetrators. The company's in-house genealogy team performed extensive research, utilizing public databases and family trees to generate new leads about the suspect's probable identity. This painstaking work eventually bore fruit, and often provided crucial information to Horry County Police Department investigators. Armed with these new leads, detectives were able to focus their investigation on a specific individual, Randy Grainger of Loris, South Carolina. Investigators collected a reference DNA sample from Grainger, which proved to be the breakthrough they had been waiting for. In August 2020, 2 years after the murders, Randy Grainger was arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including 2 counts of murder. But Grainger was not the only person implicated in this heinous act. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this was not a simple case of a lone killer, but rather a complex murder-for-hire plot involving multiple conspirators. Samantha Rabon, the daughter of Robert Marion Ford Jr. and half-sister of Robbie Stetson Ford, was also arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of criminal conspiracy. This shocking development suggested a level of family betrayal that stunned the community and added a layer of tragedy to an already horrific crime. A third individual, Teresa Martin, was also arrested in connection with the murders. Her role, while less direct, was nonetheless crucial to the execution of the crime. Martin was charged with having prior knowledge of the murder plot and for transporting Grainger to and from the crime scenes. Teresa and Martin played a crucial role in both the execution of the murders and their subsequent investigation. Initially charged alongside Grainger and Rabon, Martin ultimately chose to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced charge. On April 3, 2023, Martin pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact of murder. As part of her plea agreement, she agreed to testify against both Grainger and Rabon. Her testimony provided vital insider information about the planning and execution of the murders, helping to solidify the cases against her co-conspirators. Martin's account detailed how she had transported Grainger to the victim's home on the day of the murders and later picked him up a short distance from the burned car. She also testified about the communications between Rabon and Grainger, helping to establish the murder-for-hire aspect of the case. While Martin's cooperation was crucial to the successful prosecution of Grainger and Rabon, it did not absolve her of her role in the crimes. On February 29, 2024, following the conclusion of Rabon's trial, Martin was sentenced for her part in the murders. The details of her sentence were not immediately available, but it was expected to be significantly less severe than those given to Grainger and Rabon due to her cooperation with the investigation. The trial of Randy Grainger began on April 3, 2023, in Horry County, South Carolina. Over the course of several days, prosecutors presented a compelling case that painted Grainger as a cold-blooded killer who had been hired to commit murder for financial gain. Key evidence presented at the trial included 1. DNA evidence. The DNA profile developed from the cigarette butts and skull cap found at the scene of the burned car was conclusively matched to Grainger. 2. Cell phone data. Records showed Grainger's phone pinging off towers near the crime scenes at the time of the murders. 3. Witness testimony. Teresa and Martin provided crucial testimony about Grainger's involvement in the murders as part of a plea deal. For forensic evidence, ballistics reports linked the murder weapon to Grainger. 5. Financial records. Evidence of payments made to Grainger around the time of the murders was presented. The prosecution argued that Grainger had been hired by Samantha Rabon to kill her father and half-brother so that she could inherit a substantial sum of money. They alleged that Rabon had promised Grainger $20,000 to carry out the murders. Grainger's defense team attempted to cast doubt on the reliability of the DNA evidence and suggested that Teresa Martin's testimony was unreliable due to her own involvement in the crime. However, the overwhelming physical evidence and corroborating testimony proved too strong to overcome. On April 6, 2023, after deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Randy Dean Grainger was found guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of criminal conspiracy, third-degree arson, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Judge Doc Morgan, in delivering the sentence, spoke directly to Grainger, emphasizing the severity of his crimes. There are very few crimes that are so outrageous that they deserve the maximum penalty, the judge stated. Grainger was sentenced to consecutive terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole, effectively ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. The trial of Samantha Rabon, which began in February 2024, was perhaps even more shocking than Grainger's, as it involved a daughter allegedly orchestrating the murders of her own father and half-brother. The prosecution's case focused heavily on Rabon's motive, presenting evidence of her potential financial gain from the deaths of her family members. Key elements of the prosecution's case included: 1. Financial motive. Prosecutors argued that Rabon stood to inherit over $1.1 million from IRAs, investment funds, bank accounts, insurance payouts, and real estate if both her father and half-brother died. 2. Solicitation of murder. Evidence was presented showing that Rabon had approached Grainger to commit the murders, aware of his past convictions for violent crimes. 3. Provision of the murder weapon. The prosecution alleged that Rabon had provided Grainger with a revolver stolen from her father's home nearly a year before the shootings. For digital evidence, forensic experts testified about text message exchanges and internet searches found on Rabon's phone, including searches like "Can you receive accidental death benefit in murder?" and "Will phone memory get pulled in a police search?" 5. Testimony of co-conspirators. Both Randy Grainger and Teresa Martin testified against Rabon, providing damning accounts of her involvement in planning and facilitating the murders. The defense attempted to discredit the testimony of Grainger and Martin, suggesting that they were lying to gain favor with law enforcement. They also raised questions about the handling of evidence by former HCPD Detective SGT David Dudley, who had resigned from law enforcement in May 2023 due to mishandling of evidence. Despite these efforts, the evidence against Rabon proved overwhelming. On February 27, 2024, after a trial lasting several weeks, Samantha Rabon was found guilty of all charges. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, mirroring the sentence given to Randy Grainger. The murders of Robert and Robbie Ford and the subsequent trials of their killers had a profound impact on the Horry County community. The brutality of the crimes, coupled with the shocking revelation, that they had been orchestrated by a family member shook local residents to their core. During the sentencing phase of Rabon's trial, several family members spoke about the devastating effect the murders had on their lives. Anita Hayes, Robert Ford's sister and Rabon's aunt, described her brother as a good father and a Christian, and Robbie Ford as a good man. She characterized the crime as evil and lamented that her niece had forgotten the love her father had for his children. The case also highlighted the effectiveness of new forensic techniques, particularly the use of genetic genealogy in solving cold cases. The successful resolution of this case may lead to increased use of such methods in future investigations. The double murder of Robert and Robbie Ford stands as a chilling reminder of the depths of human greed and the devastating consequences of familial betrayal. From the initial discovery of the crime scene to the final verdicts, this case exemplifies the complexities of modern criminal investigations and the power of advanced forensic techniques. The meticulous work of investigators, coupled with breakthrough DNA analysis and the cooperation of a key witness, ultimately brought the perpetrators to justice. Randy Grainger, Samantha Rabon, and Teresa and Martin will all face the consequences of their actions, with Grainger and Rabon set to spend the rest of their lives in prison. While no verdict or sentence can truly compensate for the loss of Robert and Robbie Ford, the resolution of this case provides a measure of closure for their family and community. It also serves as a stark warning about the destructive power of greed and the importance of cherishing family bonds. As Horry County moves forward from this tragedy, the memory of Robert and Robbie Ford lives on, not just as victims of a heinous crime, but as beloved family members whose lives were cut short by an unthinkable act of betrayal. Their story, though marked by tragedy, also stands as a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice and the enduring power of truth to prevail, even in the darkest of circumstances.